It's 5,914 miles from Dublin to Pretoria, give or take. But sure, who's counting? It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone earning cap number 57. A warm welcome to Mr. Conor Cronin.
Great to be back again. Thanks a million.
Good to have you, sir. And our second guest is the owner-operator of Post to Post Sport. This is his 19th pod appearance, to go with a lot of written articles in the past. Hello to Mr. Kieran Duffy.
Yeah, maybe 200 by this time next year. Who knows?
It's definitely doable for sure. So let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Ulster in the quarterfinal of the 2023-24 United Rugby Championship, played on the evening of Saturday, June the 8th at the Aviva Stadium. The weather behaved really well. It was mild enough, dry, not too much wind. The fact that only the lower tier of the Aviva Stadium was being used made the atmosphere a bit strange, but we'll probably have to get used to that for the 24-25 season. Mike McCarthy and Leo the Lion performed their double act amidst the pyrotechnics and those drum guys, whatever it is they're doing. They warmed things up pretty well, and the teams took to the pitch with Ross Byrne getting the things underway, kicking towards the South Stand, Connor.
Yeah, and what an awful start it was, as we gave away a penalty in the first 4 seconds of the match. Look, I think in that situation, it's very obvious. You know, Robbie Henshaw is not the kind of fellow who's going to go in and hurt a player with any intent. He's just, it's a rugby collision. He's gone running in. He can't slow himself down fast enough, and he knocks out I think it's the lifter is actually who he hits, not the lifted player. But immediately they've got a penalty that they put to touch, and then I know he was only on for a short amount of time, but I think Izuchukwu was easily in that first 20 minutes the best player they had on the pitch. Ulster have had situations in the past where you have a 6 playing at 5 or a 5 playing at 6 sometimes, when Henderson was more used to doing that in years gone past. But I think it's really impressive that as a fellow who plays most of his time in the back row, he stepped up well going into the second row. And Ulster coming into this game, like, that's a lot of injuries to have to deal with, and particularly in the second row. So I think it was really obvious from the beginning that they were, they wanted to put it up to us, and they were going to make use of him to do it. What they didn't anticipate was Big Joe Mac, who on that first maul just went swimming through it and turned the ball over. And, it goes from what looks like a very positive Ulster possession to being our possession. And look, we made some good yards off some phases. And then Ulster gave a penalty away, and we go for the corner, and it's a 5-meter line-out maul that should have been a 5-meter line-out maul, and goes utterly wasted as the ball sails over absolutely everyone. And I've no idea what the call was or who was making the call, but it went all kinds of wrong right there and then. And that's frustrating, because we had a lot of those wasted opportunities in Tottenham, where a 5-meter line out could have become points and didn't become points. So it's tough now in a knockout rugby game to see us being wasteful of a 5-meter penalty like that. But look, I think there's not a whole lot happening for a few minutes. There's good Ulster possession, but I think when they do have possession, that they weren't getting very far. It was a case of, let's try 3 phases, see if we can make ground. We haven't made ground. Come on in, John Cooney, and give us a box kick, and let's see if we can create something out of that. And there was a lot of that from the early stages, but it was very, very frantic sort of first 6 or 7 minutes before we get to the first scrum. I know even the comms teams were commenting on it, how much had happened in 7 minutes, and how welcome that first scrum was, because it gave a few lads a minute to take a breath, to just sort of establish what have we had going on, where are we at right now. I think we targeted their scrum from early on, because you can see it in that first scrum. We drive hard into it. I think the intent was to go looking for a penalty and it's really good to see that intensity, and it's really good to see that that decision that, you know, we're going to use this as a strength when we can. I think I was having a chat with somebody after the match who was commenting on Andrew Porter and scrummaging, and you know, I take most of what people say with a pinch of salt when it comes to that. But the idea that he just goes for it every time, he just drives and he hits and he's powering through and he just wants to run over the fellas who are in front of him, was the point being made. And I think it's not it's not an unfair assessment of what's going on, but you really see it in that first scrum. Look, after a couple of phases, Ulster managed to get the ball anyway. And again, Isachukwu got himself through a gap and had a lovely offload to Matty Ray, who found himself in a bit of space with defenders slightly scrambling. And I think if he'd looked left, if he'd seen John Cooney there, ready to take the ball and passed it, we'd have been 7-0 down at that stage. And I think we're lucky that he doesn't see, he's not got that awareness of who's with me and where are they, because he couldn't get the pass away. And instead, we turn it over and we get a clearance. And I think part of it is because, and as I was watching it back, it's not even that Ray couldn't get the pass to Cooney. I think it's the way that James Ryan tackles him and sort of bats the ball backwards. And it's nice to see that little bit of shithousery kind of stuff going on. You know, that stuff, a bit of, I wouldn't call it dark arts, but stuff that when it goes your way, it goes your way, and you're happy out with it. Look, we cleared it out, and Ulster got a line out in a few phases. And again, they weren't getting far. And I think the entire time we were targeting a turnover, which means that we had a lot of players in towards the middle of the pitch. So when they eventually decided to spin it wide, there was a bit more space than maybe we would have liked them to have. And that bit of space gets them to within 5 meters, and another couple of phases and forwards working hard. And suddenly Timoney thinks he's over. I think when you look back on it, the way it all happened with the referee's decision and what he asked the TMO, I think was absolutely spot on. Because it is, I've got no try here. Can you give me anything that overrules that? No, you can't. Great. Let's get on with the game. Goal line dropout. And after the goal line dropout, I think we get the first example of Jimmy O'Brien getting targeted. I think, and I think probably rightly, they targeted him. You know, he hasn't had a huge amount of game time lately. He hasn't had a huge amount of game time at fullback. So, you know, they were looking for somebody who might drop a ball or might misread something. And so they went after him. He doesn't take that high ball, and it goes into touch where, again, Isachukwu thinks he's got a chance off the line out, only for it to be called back because there's been a knock on, and we get the scrum. And after a little bit of kick tennis, we eventually get an exit. I think, you know, we end up with a line out and a couple of good carries for Doris. Had a good carry in that little in this build up. Joe McCarthy, another good line from him. Osborne, the rise and rise of Jamie Osborne. Like, he had, again, another great game. A game where you say, you know, with all the talk about would we have Gary Ringrose this weekend or not, and it's okay that we didn't. It's disappointing that we didn't, but it's okay because Jamie Osborne playing really, really well. But we're not getting very far with the ball anyway. In spite of those few good breaks and a few good carries, we're not getting the distance we want, you know, demonstrating like Ulster really were up for it. And eventually they get a turnover, but it comes at a massive cost for them because Isachukwu has to go off for a HIA. And I really think that's the turning of the game right there in that one moment. Him going off is really disappointing for them, especially with the lack of second rows that they have at the moment. So it's a big blow. And look, they're their line out goes well after that, but they can't get through. They can't get past us. So again, it's a kick over the top. The pressure's on Jimmy O'Brien again. His kick gets charged down this time because they're running straight at him. Like it was, when the ball gets kicked and you hear that thunk as it's hitting somebody else's hands, and in your head you're going, oh shit, now what? Oh, phew, it's getting charged down straight into touch. So we get the line out, but again, it's a lot of good Ulster defence and good Ulster pressure that has us in this position. But look, we get the line out off that. It's Van der Fleer off the back, and it's again a bit more kick and tennis going on. And after a few phases, a big box kick, and we go to kick it back, and Jimmy takes it this time. And takes the kick back, passes it off to Van der Fleer, and then it's to Ross Byrne, and then to Tadhg Furlong, who, when I looked at it first, I thought, does he not know what to do? What's he doing? Why isn't he doing something, anything? And instead, like, what you're actually seeing is a lovely little show and go when you watch it back, and you can see it on a screen a little bit clearer. And that lovely little show and go, it just throws the defence completely. And the pass then to Osborne, he gets massive yardage out of that. He gets a huge amount of space. And I know, looking back at it, a lot of people were going, Jesus, why isn't he passing it to Gibson Park to his left there? But he backs himself against Stuart Moore. And it turns out he's right, because he gets through him and manages the offload outside instead to Robbie Henshaw, who canters over for the first score of the game, which thankfully Ross converts. And now it's taken 20 minutes. It's taken a lot of possession. It's taken a lot of territory. But eventually we're at 7-0 up after 20 minutes. Yeah,
that try just came at the right time for you anyway, for this first quarter, because there wasn't a whole lot happening. We have every week we have the shitty quarter. I still think that might qualify as it anyway, but I let it, I'm usually looking as the play goes on to see when I'm going to do the cutoff point in each half. And I was just like, Jesus, something better happen now, or Connor's really going to get off to a bad start. But yeah, that try came just at the end. But like you say, Ulster did have a lot of bad luck in that. I think losing Izuchukwu was huge. He's been doing really well playing at 6 up to now, and it was just unfortunate for them. I think Ulster are one of the unluckiest teams in world rugby almost at the moment. Everything that could go wrong often does, which is ironic because they now have a coach called Murphy. But it's just losing him at that stage. Of course, Leinster know all about losing a number 5 who was playing at the top of his game at a critical stage like that, and it just didn't work for him there. And yeah, that was a huge loss.
I think you say they're unlucky, and I think their luck is starting to turn, because Richie Murphy being there is massive. Absolutely. Any Ulster fan I was talking to during the course of the day was saying, we are so lucky. We've got somebody in who's really making a difference, because I don't think anyone was particularly fond of McFarlane before he went. So, it's great that they've got a really good coach in there now. And the only disappointing side of that is that the under-20s have lost him. Yeah. That's the only downside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, things look a lot brighter for them when they get a preseason with him and get started with the new season and a new plan. They definitely look up for them. But no, listen, we scored right at the end of the half. Another point you make about Jimmy O'Brien, I think that's right. I think they were targeting him. It makes sense. Hugo Keenan was elsewhere. He was playing sevens in Croatia. I think he overran his first kick. And then he had a couple of issues with others. There was a block kick, whatever. He did get involved in the attacking side of things later on. And I think overall his outing was pretty good, but it was, when you have a team like Ulster who's doing a lot of kicking anyway, it was a way for them to possibly get into the game, but we did manage to just about keep them out. They got lucky, they got unlucky again a couple of times, just short at the line and all that stuff. And somehow we came out of that first quarter 7-0 up. So, so the try was scored, Kieran, and the restart went from there.
Yeah, from there, Osborne put in a great kick after restart. It was what we needed as well, because like I said, we had managed to keep Ulster out from there, but they were looking good. I mean, they maybe not the better team, but they were matching us at least. Like they would have been equally good value for a 7-0 lead. So Osborne put in a great kick. I think we've praised him plenty of times on the show. He's been really, really good. Ulster had a line out, and then there was a bit of kick tennis leading to Ulster line outs. So it was a bit of a scrappy kind of start to the second quarter, if you like. It was a bit of a scrappy restart after that try. I think that probably suited Leinster because Ulster couldn't get anything going. They had a couple of lineouts, but it just ended up being Ulster kicking to Leinster and Leinster kicking to Ulster. Gibson Park actually did really well to keep one of those kicks in play. And, he's the kind of player, he obviously he didn't play the full 80 minutes, but he's the kind of player will need to be really, really on top form for the semi-final and if there is a final to be played. But finally, there's a bit of open play in the game after a line out and goes out for another Ulster line out. So it was just a bit of a stop start, kind of 5 minutes or so. From there, Leinster had line out. There was a check for a high tackle on Ross Byrne. I think it was Will against Will Addison. Ref said that Byrne was kind of falling into the tackle. I mean, it seemed to be shoulder height. He was falling. Probably would have been harsh to be anything more than a penalty, but Ross Byrne kicked the 3 points. Thankfully, it was okay. I think it's important in those decisions that it's not a case of just saying, well, the player's not hurt, so it's not dangerous. I think that's important. I think you can't wait till a player gets hurt to make a decision like that. But at the same time, there wasn't any intent in it, and it was kind of, I mean, Bird was falling into the tackle, so you couldn't really give it as anything other than a penalty. But then Gibson Park puts in a great kick that causes a mix up in the in-goal area for Ulster. There was led to a dropout, which is claimed by Doris, who goes on a run, and through a few phases, Osborne does really well again. James Lowe does well to take the ball into contact. Usually we see him kind of take the ball into wider areas as a winger, but he actually brought it into contact, and then he finds himself on the other side of the pitch for Ross Byrne to play him in through a hole and get in. So that's good from James Lowe, because I think obviously a lot of defenses are going to be looking at him as one of our most dangerous players. He kind of mixed things up there. And it was great energy he went into contact and then got straight up and back into things. So suddenly Leinster were further ahead, and maybe not fully deservedly. I mean, because Ulster were doing pretty well, and later in the half after that, Ross Byrne converted that try, so it was 17-0 at that stage. And late in the half, then Ulster put Leinster under a lot of pressure. Probably could have a penalty try, maybe could feel aggrieved for that. And those are what we call the championship minutes, obviously just before and just after half time. It was a big moment for them not scoring. Again, there maybe could have been a penalty try because there were a couple of infringements, but at the same time, Leinster managed to hold them out. And we look at all those. We look at three of the last 4 Champions Cup finals Leinster have involved conceding just before half time. So I think it's something Leinster typically in the league, in the old pro whatever number you want days, Leinster would have been quite good at scoring in those minutes rather than conceding in those minutes. So I think that was a really big psychological thing. Whether Ulster should have were a little bit hard done by there or not, it was a big psychological moment for Ulster to not score there and Leinster to not concede. Ulster were probably thinking, here we go again, our luck's out. And Leinster, their point of view, they can pat themselves on the back and say, right, we're going in 17-0 up, haven't necessarily been 17 points better. Obviously, we know from Leinster in the past, 17 points isn't always the best lead, but it was still pretty productive first half. I think we'll talk more about it in the second half. It was fairly clinical. I think Leinster took their chances, and Ulster didn't have anything on the board at that stage. So it was probably a pretty positive half, because it reminded me a bit of the inverse of the European Cup final a few weeks ago, where Toulouse probably weren't the better team in that first half, but they took their chances when they had them. They kicked for points. I was glad to see off that penalty that Ross Byrne had for the potential high tackle. I was glad to see go for the 3 points. I think that's what you have to do. There's a big difference between a 7-0 win and a 7-0 lead and a 10-0 lead in knockout rugby. So I thought we managed to get a bit better. Ulster probably could feel a bit hard done by to not get anything out of that. And I know you said at the end of the game, Jeff, that it wasn't, the scoreline probably didn't reflect the game, considering Ulster were very much in it. But sometimes in knockout rugby, it's all about just who can take their points. And it was a good. It was probably the best position we could be in at halftime, given the way the first half went.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think straight up, I think we were really unlucky not to concede a penalty try there. I mean, that maul was inching towards the line. There was not one but two penalties found at it. There was, I think, Doris had taken off his bind, and then there was also a legal entry on the other side. So when a maul is moving towards the line, it's looking to go straight over. And if there's any kind of penalty from the defense, you'd be looking for it if it was the other way around.
I wonder if I hadn't been at the Aviva, if I had been in, you said Ravenhill there. It's not Ravenhill anymore, but if it had been in Ulster, would it have been? Would the ref maybe have looked at that a little bit differently? Maybe it could have been. I don't think the game was ref particularly badly, but that was a big moment. No.
No, yeah. I mean, it's interpretation, it's but no, I think that but the other thing I noticed is that I didn't hear the Ulster players really pushing for it either. Maybe someone did mention it to the ref, but the way you can hear the ref mic. But I was surprised. I didn't notice it at the time that it happened. But looking back at it, it looked like a clear case.
I was going to say, in the build up to that, you've got you're saying it wasn't a bad refereeing performance. There's a strange moment where Andrew Brace says to James Ryan, so I've got in one of the lineouts, I've got number 5 binding on the arm there in the air, and James Ryan says, I'll have a word with him about that. as if it's not him with 5 on his back already. And I think
I have a strong word with myself.
Yeah, as you say, the refereeing is not a factor for this game. Just as you're both saying, they absolutely would have been right for a captain to step forward and say, are we not looking at a stronger sanction here, sir?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a leadership issue. Maybe that's kind of, sometimes you can be a bit too well behaved in the refereeing books. I mean, maybe we talk about sometimes Leinster trying to build a score by playing lots of nice rugby and scoring tries, and maybe afraid at times to just knock over penalties and win a little bit uglier, get a lead. Maybe it's the equivalent in terms of discipline, in terms of leadership for Ulster. Sometimes you have to get in the ref's ear, and I mean, sure, we know, we talked about in the past with Johnny Sexton, he'd never be afraid to say something to the ref before or after a game, obviously. But he'd maybe you needed someone there just to say, look, this keeps happening, and we see it happening as well, and maybe that puts it in the ref's mind, right? Well, now I have to do something, and that 7 points could have made a big difference at halftime.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that the scorelines at halftime and full time didn't reflect what had happened, but you could still see why Leinster were ahead, though. I always thought in both cases, I thought the margin could have been closer. And obviously, if it was closer at halftime, they might have felt better coming out the second half. But anyway, listen, it is what it is. And the halftime score, like we said, was Leinster 17, Ulster 0. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the rugby sphere. First of all, we have a radio slot every Friday after the 5 o'clock news on Dublin South 93.9 FM. Then when it comes to online, as well as our main site at harpinonrugby.com, we also have a presence on X, formerly known as Twitter. Our YouTube channel has our preview show every Friday, plus a clip, including some extra chat from this pod about Jemison Gibson Park and James Lowe. We're also on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. So if you're on any or all of those platforms, please do give us a follow to check out our full range of Leinster and Ireland rugby content. So the Ulster team were out in the pitch ready to resume for about a minute or two before Leinster joined them. And then Billy Burns got the second half underway, Conor.
Yeah, and it was nice that we got a clean restart this time out, and, nothing to worry about until, a couple of moments later, because with all the pressure, again, Ulster really were putting every effort in to try and stop us making ground, and to try and put us under pressure to make mistakes. And the mistake came because Jimmy O'Brien knocks the box, attempt to receive the box kick, knocks it on, and Robbie Henshaw is judged to be in front of him. So that's a penalty for offside. And a bit disappointing to see Henshaw give away the first penalty in both halves. It's nothing. It's just coincidence, I think. But I think Ulster made the right call then to just start the scoreboard ticking over, to say, right, the worst thing that could happen right now, we've been unlucky twice in that, we didn't get a penalty try and Timoney was short. So we need something on the scoreboard because we don't want to get nilled for definite. So I think it's the right decision at that stage. Come out, start the half in a very, very positive way, take your 3 points. And after that 3 points is taken, we see the first of the cotton wool coming out as Tyke Furlong got taken off, and Mikey 5As, he gets brought in for an interesting, his first action in the game is that right after the restart, Stockdale knocks it on, and we've got a scrum from which we win a penalty advantage that we never ended up using, because I think I was kind of looking at it, and when Ross Byrne kicked it cross field, I was kind of going, oh, we'll come straight back for the advantage, please, sir. And then it lands, because it landed a little bit awkwardly for Lowe. It's like, oh, there's James Lowe, I'll kick it. He didn't get to it. But James Lowe finds a way as he kicks it forward, not once, but twice, and then dives on it in the in-goal area to score his second try. And I think, the bounce of a rugby ball is a funny thing, but James Lowe gets lucky with it. It bounces kindly for him on both kicks, so that literally all he has to do is fall on it and score the try. And it's unfortunate that Ross hits the post with the conversion, but now we've gone from conceding 3 to scoring 5 of our own, and we're 22-3 up now. And I think that, again, Ulster get unlucky not long after that, because Jacob Stockdale takes a big hit in the head. And I think, when you look back on it again, and the advantage of having commentary and new angles and other ways to see things when you're watching back, and you can rewind it and look back at it yourself when you're watching a rewatch. He's very unlucky because Moore jumps up to take the ball and hits him in the head with his hip. But it's not just that, it's that Dan Sheehan is on the other side of that, and he's kind of getting sandwiched between the impact of his own player's hip, and that's hard, and there's nowhere for him to go. So I think he was fairly knocked out, and that brings him out of the game. And it's unfortunate because I think in a few moments of very typical Stockdale running, he had some really good moments in the first half that you worry about those moments. You worry about it. Stockdale at his best, chipping and chasing, is an absolute threat and a real weapon. So again, they're unlucky to have him going off. There's a run of phases not long after that for Ulster, and they don't get over the gain line very much again, and it takes us giving away a penalty for them to get down the pitch. And they went for the line out in the maul, and we dragged it down. So the arm is out for the penalty. And again, if what happens next doesn't happen next, maybe the arm is out for something more. But they go one phase right, and there's a whole load of Leinster lads still lying on the floor from the collapsed maul, and Dave McCann has acres of space, absolute acres of space, so that when Cooney passes it back out towards the sideline towards him, all he has to do is just run at that space. There's nobody there. There's no way that, like, the entire defence have come off the maul and all tracked across. So there's no way anyone's getting near him the second that ball spins back the other way. So, it's a really well worked try. They absolutely deserved it. It was they put the effort in to earn it. And again, we get a missed conversion, so it's 22-8 now. And I think Ulster are getting reward for what was a lot of hard work up to that point. Off the restart after that, we were incredibly aggressive. I think it's almost like, look at the mistake we just made. How do we atone for that? Because you watch Josh van der Fleer sprinting at the player who's about to receive and in everything's going on, he steals it and puts a pass away that gets Jimmy O'Brien into some space with one run. You've got Gibson Park with another run. You've got Joe Mack and a really nice, typical Joe Mack out the back door pass that he seems to be quite enjoying making recently. And the Ulster defence is really good. And then Doris gets a gap with, again, a good offload that's into Gibson Park, who, the way he runs those support lines, it's brilliant to watch. It's so good to watch. And as he's running, he's getting us within 7 meters. And at that stage, I think Ross is looking up and going, what can we do? There's a bit of space. And this time we don't get the bounce of the ball, because as he crossfield kicks, it bounces and goes into touch in goal. So it's a 22 dropout. And I think Jimmy O'Brien's trying really hard to get to it, but it wasn't, I don't think it was quite on. But good to see the bit of creativity, good to see Ross under pressure to be creative. But we get a half chance when Burns tries something similar and he can't find his man, and Henshaw and Lowe are trying very hard to combine to make something happen, but they end up losing it. Ulster get a couple of good breaks before we lose the kick tennis, as Ross absolutely slices the kick into touch. Like, it's the kind of one where one of the lads I sit with, Gav, will regularly shout "slice it" just as the fullback or whoever is about to kick the ball, and you'd swear he'd done it there, because it was just straight off to the right. Ulster tried a really sneaky move off that line out, one not dissimilar to how we scored against La Rochelle last year in the final, where the ball is essentially going to a man running through the line out in the middle. And they got a lot of phases. But look, there's nothing very much happens at that stage before Ulster get the ball back and essentially knock it on in pretty much the same spot that line out was, bringing us to sort of the end of that quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the first half how I tried to work out how to split up the quarters, and I obviously look around the 20-minute mark and the 60-minute mark. But what happened here was, it got to the 60-minute mark and the play was just still going on, and it was still going on and on and on. I couldn't split it up. So where Connor's finished there is more at the 56 minutes. But before that, that was a very, very James Lowe try that he scored. Like you say, only he would manage to find a way to make something out of that. It just basically, he just made the ball succumb to his will, really, is what's after happening there. And but like I say, the Ulster kept coming back. You mentioned there were a couple of Leinster players on the floor. I wonder, did Mr. Nick Timoney have anything to do with them still being on the floor? Which, just to be clear, you admire. You admire that stuff. Listen, that's the whole point. That's back row play right there in a nutshell. Yeah. You get away with it, and we would have loved it if it was going the other way. And
you want shithousery.
Exactly.
And you wanted both sides of the ball, and fair play. Like, he's managed to keep in there. I think he's got Doris and McCarthy, and there may be a third player who's just stood up and I missed who it was, but he's done a really good job of preventing them from going anywhere. That's how
it's done. But the thing is that in that quarter, and even as the game goes on a bit further, they Ulster still managed to get within 14. And as long as that gap was 14 and there was like double digits of time, minutes left in the match, you never really felt that they were put away. And that was really how it kind of felt in the stadium there. But so we had that knock on at 56 minutes, and Leinster had a scrum outside the 22, Kieran.
So Leinster at this stage had to do a lot of play in their own half, and to be honest, like you said there, if Ulster were able to fashion something, I mean, ultimately it was Leinster who got the next score, but it was a case of Leinster having to do a lot of defending in their own half, good defending, which is something that in the past, like the past couple of seasons, we were talking about Leinster excellent defense, especially I suppose in URC games. And especially when it's been pretty much the first choice 15, obviously there's the odd player missing from this 15, but this is pretty much as strong as we could have gone on the day. So it was good to see us hold off Ulster, but they had all the momentum. They would have deserved probably the way the game was going, and maybe they would have, on a different day, if they had a bit of luck or the rub of the green, as the expression goes, maybe they would have got over here. But it was a couple of relieving kicks. Thought Ross Byrne kicked relatively well in the game. I mean, and like Connor mentioned there, he's under a bit of pressure to be creative. I'm sure he hears the noise about people calling for, look, surely Frawley and Sam Prendergast should have been getting more game time. I think Ross is good for, we'll talk about it more later and probably over the summer, but Ross is good for keeping things kicking over, but he needs that bit of creative edge of just trying to control the game a bit more. Like Sexton would have. Obviously, we're not going to have another Sexton anytime soon, but a couple of relieving kicks, and then Jimmy O'Brien had a big moment here where Connor mentioned the first half he was getting involved in the attacking, and he got up to claim a big one. It ends up coming back again, and Byrne puts in a big pick, and a bit unlucky for it to be spilt. I don't know who the Ulster player who spilt it was, but it was Jamie Osborne again, putting him under a lot of pressure. And that's something he's been really good at. Like, I think Jamie Osborne's had the kind of season where maybe if you're a casual fan or only watching the highlights, you wouldn't see a lot of what he's doing. But he's kind of always has something to do with either off the ball in a try or a few phases before a try is scored. So it's kind of maybe not the highlights, but maybe the highlights of the highlights. So when Leinster got the ball back there, McCarthy went on a rampaging run. That's what we like to see from him. I mean, he's a big guy, and so did James Ryan there. He made a couple of big yards. And once again, Osborne's drawn in to the attack. He draws in a couple of defenders. Henshaw gets the ball, and Larmer's in plenty of space. Larmer's another player I think's had a really good season. He's needed a good season to get back into Ireland contention. I think 4 years ago you would have thought surely he'll be the one starting in the World Cup quarterfinals or whatever round we're well hardly going to go beyond the quarterfinal, are we? But he'd be starting in the big games for Ireland, and his injuries didn't help. Loss of form at times didn't help. But he's really coming to his own now, and he was our best player against Toulouse in that Champions Cup final as well, probably. So it was a real counter-attacking try. I mean, Leinster were under all the pressure, but suddenly that try is converted by Ross Byrne again, and it's 29-8. So suddenly it's a 21-point game. I mean, it's a 3-try game, so that's that's a big margin now, and you would forgive Ulster for putting their heads down a little bit after the fact that nothing's gone their way. But in fairness, they hit straight back. Leinster probably won't be too happy with the defence, but it was a bit of magic from John Cooney, a good chip through. We love a nice chip chase in Irish rugby. And Stuart Moore manages to wrestle his way over. Did well to ground it because he was under a lot of pressure. And it is converted, and something with 15 minutes to go. It's only a 14-point game. That was a perfect response from Ulster. So we had Leinster responding really well to being under a lot of pressure. The best way you can defend sometimes is by scoring a try and pushing the lead out. And then Ulster, great response, hitting straight back and scoring a try. I agree with what the two of you were talking about. In terms of management, I think they'll be a big team next season after having a preseason under the new management. So suddenly it's 29-15, and you're thinking maybe Ulster, if they get if they get a score here next, it's a crucial next score is really important moment. And if they get another score, suddenly they're potentially only within 7 points, and they're the team with the momentum. But it was Leinster who scored next. Josh van der Flyer, as we know he's good at, is playing on the wing at times. Henshaw made a really good break for this try. He managed to he got caught in one tackle, but he just managed to make those extra couple of yards and crucially draw on an extra couple of defenders. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do when you're being tackled. I mean, he was never going to get to the try line, but he drew in about 3 defenders rather than one. Frawley got involved there in the clear out as well, and again just got rid of just made sure those three defenders couldn't do anything in particular. So the ball comes out to Osborne, who sees Van der Fleur on their wing and plays it in at that stage. It's 34-15. Ross Byrne, his last act of the game, looking at Sam Prendergast coming in. It wasn't quite a Ronan O'Gara watching Johnny Sexton take a place kick moment, but maybe a slight handoff into the future. Byrne kicks it. He comes off. I think he could be relatively happy with his performance. I mean, considering the pressure he's been on. Again, like, I don't know if Ulster had been behind, how well he would have done. But Ross Byrne converts that, so it's 36-15, and the game's probably over at this stage. I mean, there's about 10 minutes to go, and Leinster got the next score again. There was a Leinster, Prendergast came on for Ross Byrne, and a few minutes later, Max Deegan came on for Caelan Doris. Good to see Max Deegan get a game in the run-outs. Myself and Connor were talking in the RDS how oftentimes Leinster win things or find themselves in good positions at the business end of the season towards the top of the table or in the latter stage of the European Cup because of having a lot of good hands throughout the regular season. I mean, and Max Deegan's been one of them. I think he has potential to be more than that, but he's been one of those players that's helped us just keep things ticking over when we didn't have the full internationals. So 5 minutes ago, Leinster have a line out. Ball goes over everyone. I don't think this was an intentional move, but Sam Prendergast did really well to recover. He sniped in there and claimed the ball. So crucially, Leinster keep possession. I don't think it would have made much of a difference to the result, but in the end, that's the kind of thing you like to see your fly half doing, just reading the game and having that bit of electricity. That's something we've said maybe Ross Byrne doesn't have at times. So he makes a run, brings in a few defenders. Ball gets played out to Baird, who gets us nearly up the line. I think we're about 5 meters away. And then Maloney in the next phase gets over the line, touches down. Good to see Ross Maloney again. He's another one who keeps us ticking over throughout the season, and he's capable of playing a role in these bigger games too. So really clinical rugby, and that's what we'll need next week in South Africa. Great by Prendergast as well, who converts. And, he only had a brief cameo. I think he was only on for about 10-15 minutes, but still, he did very well in this 10-15 minutes. And at the end there, Ulster finally get over again with the clock in red. I have to say it was deserved. It came off a line out. They set them all. And Doak, who had come on for Burns just at the start of this quarter, puts in a good kick. It's claimed by Lowry, who charges over the line. So Ulster managed to get that last score. And it finishes there. And in fairness to Ulster, they kept pushing right to the end. I think that last try, even though it obviously doesn't have any effect on the league as such, because it's knockout rugby at this stage and they're out of it. But I think that last try, it wasn't converted, but that'll do wonders for them in their off season, because they'll go now and reset, get back on the training ground. Obviously, some of them will be involved in the Ireland camp against South Africa, but they'll be able to say, look, we pushed that Leinster side, and maybe if there had been an extra season under that coaching ticket, maybe suddenly that game's a lot closer and Ulster are taking some of their chances. And they pushed Munster as well, who obviously finished top of the table. So, like, if this playoff bracket was next season, Ulster would probably be higher up, and they'd be certainly a team you'd be wanting to avoid. So, which is good for Irish rugby, because we've said before we need 4 strong provinces. That was that. So Ulster deserving of that last try, but Leinster fairly clinical when they need to be in that second half.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the start of that quarter, the build up to that Larmer try. I mean, you started your bit there talking about a scrum, and the reason I had trouble separating the quarters is because just the play just kept going on. There was kicks staying in play, there was advantages running out, there was all sorts, and you're talking about this stage of the game, the 60th minute. A lot of them are coming to the end of their shifts. A lot of them know that they're going to be only playing 60 minutes, so they're literally at the end of not all the subs had really started coming on at that stage. And I worked it out. It was over 4 minutes. Now, 4 minutes to some may not sound like much, but that's continuous running rugby, nonstop, nothing going into touch, no breaks in play, nothing. And it was almost exhausting when you watch it back. And eventually, and there was a couple of unfortunate mistakes, but I think it was Will Addison towards the end of it. I think he had one kick that was very poor. It fell kind of short. And then there was the second one where we kicked it into the 22. I think he spilled it. That sort of set up the move, and we just, like you say, Larmer finished. But that was a key moment. And now, like you say, they came back and still got within 14 points again. So it was never really never really assured until that Van der Fleer try. But listen, we just always managed to stay ahead. And just a shout out as well to Joe McCarthy, who got player of the match. I mean, literally from the first minute, as Connor said, he got into that. The line out maul is a key facet of Ulster's game, and at that very first one, he got involved and he disrupted it and put it in their heads that, listen, you may not be able to get away with this all day. And he had turnovers, he had offloads, and the other thing I noticed that before the match, we weren't really talking about him that much. Which is sort of which shows how kind of settled, and we know he is in both blue and green. He's just taken those jerseys, and we expect those performances from him now. So it was a great performance from him. It was a good cameo from Sam, like you said, that little bit of football skills as well. Normally we'd say like, oh, they could make it into the Ireland team, but just a few nights ago, I hear rumors that the Ireland soccer team actually won a match. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm not sure that's corroborated by evidence, but listen, a bit of football from Leinster players in that second half was good to see. And just overall, listen, like we said, Ulster were unlucky at times, but I think we did deserve to stay ahead anyway up to the end. And like you say there, the final score at the very end was Leinster 43, Ulster 20. So that result puts Leinster into the Final Four. And in the end, it was all home wins in the quarterfinals. First, Munster put Ospreys away handily enough. Then Benetton put it up to the Bulls in Pretoria, but could only finish within 7. Then on Saturday evening in Scottstown, Manny Libak missed 4 place kicks, which despite Glasgow's final winning margin of 17 points, could very well have made the difference. All of that leaves next Saturday semi-finals as the seedings predicted, with the Bulls hosting Leinster and Munster will entertain the Glasgow Warriors. Meanwhile, on the 7th circuit, the World Series may be over, but the Irish squads are getting some more preparation for the Olympics with the Rugby Europe Championship, which consists of 2 tournaments, the first of which was held in Makarska in Croatia over the weekend. The women got off to a strong start in their pool before going on to lose 4 in a row, which saw them finish in 8th position. The men, on the other hand, have continued their good form, and 5 wins in a row saw them through to the final against France. But alas, it wasn't to be. We were in it right up to the final whistle, just couldn't get past the French defense in the second half, losing 2 of our own lineouts in the process, which is criminal in this code, to finish on the losing side by 12 points to 7. Still, it was a good outing for Hugo Keenan in particular, for him to get integrated into the squad, and the second and final round of this championship takes place in Hamburg at the end of the month. All of which brings us to our final thoughts from the match, starting with Connor.
Yeah, look, we've said it within the main chat, that Ulster were very unlucky. The scoreline doesn't necessarily reflect the quality that they brought with them and the challenge that they put up to us and the disruption they created to prevent us scoring. And I think that, had they kept Izuchukwu on, that would have been massive for them. If they hadn't needed to use him at 5 and had been able to keep him at 6 and have 2 regular second rows, that changed everything again. But you play the team that's in front of you. You do what you do in front of the people who are there, and the result is really all that matters. I'd have taken a win by 1. My heart mightn't have dealt with it, but I would have taken it in the end. And the important thing was getting a win and putting plans in place for getting to South Africa. With reports that some of the lads left first thing this morning and are already there, making sure that they have time to settle before they hit training. Probably some of them tomorrow, and the rest on Tuesday. That's the big thing. There's some really bright sparks within that game. There's some really positive moments. Some players who absolutely trying their best to put the hurt of a couple of weeks ago behind them and show what they can do. I want to see more of that this coming week. It's going to be a much different challenge, but like I say, job done. Let's move on to South Africa.
Absolutely. Kieran?
I think we look at how competitive the URC has become. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, regardless of maybe not doing in the playoffs, but Leinster would have, back before it was the URC, when it was the Pro 14 or whatever number it was after it, Leinster would top the table with relative ease, and then the playoffs maybe wouldn't always go our way, but we'd always be top of the table. This is the first time in many seasons, I think, since even since about 2016 or 17 that Leinster haven't actually topped the regular season table. So that's an awful long time. We're long past the time of being 4 in a row. So sometimes Leinster are going to win games without being blowing teams away and being by far the best side. I think ultimately that'll stand to us. We talked about how the South African teams joining will stand to Irish rugby in terms of just boosting our quality overall. I think everyone has to play a bit better now in the league. I was writing a piece about maybe they'll look at something like destination playoff series. I don't think that'll necessarily be it being held in one European country, but rather alternating between South Africa and Europe. I wonder if they'll kind of have a destination final, but that might be something they look at. Then again, it's the nature of the competition. Everyone has to travel. I mean, we've talked about how Leinster have been bitten at times by having the South African series in the wrong time. And, if Leinster had picked up 1 or 2 points, then we wouldn't be against in our tour to South Africa. We wouldn't be going down to play Bulls. They'd be coming up to play us, and that changes the dynamic completely. So, look, it's there's a lot to be happy about. It wasn't a performance. I think in terms of Ulster, they could be happy with a lot. And maybe they probably weren't going to win the league this season. They were probably unlucky to not win the Irish Shield this season, which might have been, which might have given them a bit of a boost. But they have every chance now of, based on this performance, they have every chance of saying, look, we're a good team. We can put plenty more into this next season and doing very well. So look, I think it's a case of job done. I think Ross Byrne, he was under a bit of pressure to do well, especially when the winner, not that we're guaranteed to win this game, but the winner would be going down to South Africa. That's an entirely different setup. So he was under a lot of pressure. He did fairly well. Love Sam Prendergast's cameo. Again, I'd love to see him get more time at 10 next season. Myself and Connor were talking in the stands there in the RDS against Connacht that, Sam Prendergast puts on a bit of muscle. He could be the starting 10 by next Christmas for Leinster. And, there's obviously a conversation to be had about, look, Leinster have 4 fly halves at the moment and some younger fellas, what's going to happen with them? Maybe one of them has to go. I think Sam Prendergast certainly shouldn't be the one to go. Look, job done, happy enough with it, and good to see Leinster build a bit of a score as well, because that's something that hasn't happened as much. That's something, there was a bit of luck involved, but that's something that hasn't happened as much. I mean, you could look at 3 of those tries that we got on the day. They were fairly clinical rugby. They were good counter-attacking, and sometimes that's what you need to do. I mean, knockout rugby, it's all about winning the game. It's not about playing attractive rugby, and I think that's something Leinster have been afraid to do in the past, win a game a little bit ugly. Look, job done, but Ulster have plenty to be happy about in that performance. I think they'll be a very dangerous team next season.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so listen, we're just going to have a quick look ahead to next week. We're going to have a preview show. We're going to be talking a lot about it during the week. But now that I have the two of you on, starting with yourself, Connor, big semi-final down at Pretoria. What are you making of it?
It's massive. Look, the Bulls may not be happy with how they played at the weekend. They're certainly going to tighten some things up. I think Benetton have done us a huge favour, because Benetton ran them hard and forced them to work harder maybe than they expected to work, meaning that they're going to be a little more tired, not as tired as jet lag tired or anything, but they will be a little bit more tired than maybe they expected to be. And I think the other favour Benetton have done for us is show us places where they can be exploited, show us places where we can hit at them and do a job. I think forget about our own video analysis from this week. Don't worry about watching the Ulster game back, lads. Watch the Benetton Bulls game. Let's start finding holes, because they're there to be found.
Absolutely. Kieran?
Look, it's a massive ask. I mean, you're going down to the other end of a massive continent. It's one of my bugbears, people talking about Africa as if it's one country. I mean, it's actually takes up half the length of the world, and we're going to the very most southern end of it. So it's something, again, I talked about, maybe destination playoffs would be looked at, but look, this is the situation everyone's in. If Munster win their semi-final, I think they'll be favourites, because whoever wins between Bulls and Leinster will have to, again, make a long trip back up. But if Glasgow managed to win that, I think probably whoever's down in Bulls and Leinster will be favourites, but not as much as Munster would have been, because this is going to be a very physical game. This is going to be a very competitive game. It's a lot. It's a big ask for Leinster. I think one we're capable of pulling off. But at the end of the day, hopefully everyone's fit for it. I know, as Conor was saying, some of the players are already there now. Some will be coming a little bit later. Some of the coaching staff. It's going to be a very intense week. Hopefully, it's an intense 2 weeks. Hopefully, we get the job done. But yeah, I'd agree. Look at what Benetton did. On paper, we're a better team than Benetton, so we should be able to do more. I mean, as well, I will point out that Benetton butchered an opportunity for a try, and they only lost by 7 points. They butchered opportunity in the first half. So that game could have gone extra time or could have gone the other way. I don't think Bulls are unbeatable, but I think they're going to be very difficult to beat. So, look, big ask. I'd hope for a really good 80-minute performance, and whatever the result is, you just have to take it. But I don't think this game has much of an effect on the South Africa tour over the summer, because it's such different circumstances. I mean, there's been no time to settle in, really. Leinster have got there today, and we'll have our Sunday, as we're talking on this today, and they'll just have to settle in, go immediately, very intense. Regardless of what's happening, I think everyone's going to need a lie down on Sunday. But it's a big one, and I'd say I would call Bulls favourites just because they haven't had to travel, but at the end, that's the nature of the modern URC, and I think Leinster are capable of putting a good performance, but Bulls, I definitely say, are favourites for this one.
Yeah, I agree. It's a totally different scenario to the Ireland tour of South Africa. Although I have a funny feeling the South African press are going to be saying all week that they will be virtually playing the Irish team next Saturday.
Here we disrespected them about before they won 2 World Cups.
There's going to be more about that. Someone will say something in passing during the week, and that'll be all proportionally.
Maybe someone will say something on this podcast that the South Africa press picks up, and then you'll go viral. Maybe
they'll find something, or they might use AI with our voices or something. You never know.
I'm pretty sure 11 Leinster players have already said that they'll see somebody in a final. So, 12 Leinster players, yeah.
There you go. Okay, listen, that's brilliant, lads. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks again to Conor and Kieran for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks,
cheers, guys.
As for our next batch of Harpin, look out for our 80+ column on Wednesday. Then it's all about that URC semi-final in Pretoria. We'll have a preview show on the Friday featuring Kigo, and our wrap pod will record on Sunday evening. So as ever, keep up with our content at harpinrugby.com and across our social media channels. The links are in the program notes. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.